Well, hello again, everybody. This is SQL Dan with another Snowflake SQL tip. Today, we are going to be talking about how to count objects that have a zero count. Might sound a little mysterious, so let me set it up for you. We're looking right now at a picture of Saturn and some of its moons, and we have a data set that will include the planets and their moons. And what we'd like to do is end up with a result set that looks like this. But notice there's a couple of planets that have no moons at all, and we want to make sure that they're included in our results. Effectively, each record in the table is one moon or one satellite, and so some of the planets appear multiple times when they have more than one moon around them. So here's just a small sampling of the data here. We can see Earth, and we can see Mars, and we can see Jupiter. And so our task is going to be that we first need to collect the distinct value for the planets, and then we just need to count how many times each one appears. The challenge is still going to be how we're going to handle the ones that don't appear at all. And so that's what we're going to talk about as we go through this video. And I hope you'll stick around all the way to the end to see how we even make sure and put them in the right order. So we're now ready to jump over to our SQL interface. And let's just jump in here. We're going to start by using a table called satellites. And as I mentioned, I got this data set from Kaggle, and so satellites is one of the two tables that's a part of this data set called Planets and Moons that was uploaded by Joakim Arvidsson. And I'll put a link to this data set down in the description so that you can duplicate this if you'd like. The other reason that I'm really going out of my way to point out the source of this data set is that I know scientifically there are some questions about just how many moons some of the planets have. So I don't want to get lost into that. I want to focus strictly on writing queries that accurately reflect what's in the data set. Then if you have issues with the data set, just like in real life, make sure you've got a good query. And then if you've got questions about the data set itself, then you can address those separately. So anyway, let's take a look here. We got a select star from the satellites table, and we can see it pulls up a whole bunch of records here. It looks like 177 of them, as a matter of fact. And we've got information on which planet the moon or satellite is associated with, and then the name of that particular moon or satellite, and then some other information about the gravity and the size and all that kind of stuff. But really, for our purposes today, we're just focused on the planets and the number of records associated with each planet. Okay, so the first step that we would like to do in order to begin building our query is that we are going to select the planet names. Select the planet. All right, and from satellites. And we're going to group by the names of the planet. So when we do that, we'll get an individual list of all the planets that showed up, and it looks like we've got 7 of them. Another reason to love this data set is that Pluto still gets included in there, so they haven't dissed poor Pluto yet. So we've got 7 of them that show up here in our group by. Okay, and so after we have our group by, the next thing to do is to include a count function with each one. So we'll say comma, and we'll say COUNT, and then put an asterisk like that, which means we're going to count how many records are in each of these groupings. So we do that, and this right here is our basic query. These are kind of spread all the way across the page. I'm just going to drag them closer together to make it easier to read here. Okay, but this is our basic results of how many moons are associated with each planet in this data set right here. So we can see 1 with the Earth, and 2 with Mars, and 3 with Jupiter, etc., etc. But now we face the challenge of What are we going to do about those ones that aren't in there at all? So because the satellites table only lists planets that do have moons, those ones that do not have moons are not in here at all. So fortunately, this data set has another table that has just a list of planets itself in it. We'll consider it sort of a master table of the planet. So select star from planets. And this is a very common way to architect data, where you have a master table with one record for each of the values that appear, and then a one-to-many relationship between this and the records that are associated with that. But in this case, we do have a list of all 9 planets in this table. So what we need to do is join together the planets table with the satellites table. So tell you what, let's use our base query that we had here that already had the counts on it, and we'll use that as our starting point. Okay, and then let's join to it the planets table. So right here where the from was, I'll paste that in there, and then we'll change that to a join. Okay, so we have both tables involved, and then of course we've got to build the join. So I am going to alias the satellites table as an S, the planets table as a P, and then include the join condition. The field that's being used to join is called planet in both tables, P-L-A-N-E-T, like so. And one of them comes from the S table, and one of them comes from the P table. And then, let's see, before I can run it, I also need to alias these tables right here, because now this column appears in both tables. Okay, so there we go. Now we have it joined, and let's see. We're probably going to see, well, we are going to see that these results are not significantly different than what we saw before. We still have just 7 planets and their counts, even though we've joined to the planets table. So what's wrong now? Well, the join that we did is an inner join. So when you have an inner join, the same value has to exist in both tables. And as we've already seen, the planets of Mercury and Venus do not exist in the satellites table at all, so they don't get picked up in this join. So what we have to do instead is we have to select the records coming from the planets table and get all of them. And then by using this outer join, this right join is an outer join, and it says give me all the records from the planets table, and if there's a match from the satellite table, then include that as well. And notice now that we have 9 planets. So we're getting closer to where we wanted to be, but alas, there's still a problem. And the problem is this. Look at down here at Venus and Mercury, and notice that it says that there's 1 moon for each one of them. And we've just spent all of this video saying that there are not any moons for these 2. So what are we going to do about this? First of all, why is this happening? And it's happening because we're using a count that says just count the records, right? And so there is a record for each of these 2 planets, even though there was no join on the other side. There is a record on the planet side, and so it got included in the count. So the way that we make this show a 0 count instead of a 1 count is we simply need to count on a field that exists in the outer joined table, meaning the one that we're joining to that doesn't have all the data in it. So instead of saying select star, what we could do is we could count S planet, like so. And when we do that, you'll see that our counts now turn out to be 0. So that's fantastic. That's exactly what we wanted. So before we go any further, I'd like to dive in just a little bit on exactly what's going on with this count S planet right here and why it returned to 0, just to clear it up and make sure that you're comfortable with what we're doing here. So I'm actually going to add that field to our query here. Okay, and I need to add it to the group by as well. And we'll leave the count here, because that will really help elucidate the situation. Okay, so this is our join condition. I'm going to scoot these in just so we can see everything much better. Well, maybe. There we go. Good enough. Okay. So again, we've joined on these conditions right here. So we said when the planet from the P table equals the planet from the S table, great. And in the cases where there is no planet in the S table, because this is an outer join, we don't have any records at all. So now we can use the property of counting, which says that we don't count nulls, right? So since we're counting right here and we're counting the values from S planet, that's why we get a 0. When we were counting records, or if I were to count from P planet, I'd go back to getting a 1. In fact, I could do that really quick. Well, goodness. There we go. There we go. So when I count from P planet, I do get a 1, but when I count from an S planet, I get a 0. So hopefully that helps you see exactly what's going on and why we're able to get a 0 count on that. Now I promised you a bonus before we closed up here, and that is I'd like to put these planets in the correct order as well, because Mercury should come first, and either Pluto or Uranus should come at the very end. And so the way that we have them right now is not the way that we'd like them to be. However, there is a field in planets that we can use to put them in the correct order. It's not the ordinal position, but there is a field here called distance from the sun, and so we can use that to put them in order by their distance from the sun. So we have our group by right here, order by. Okay, and now I'm typing this, and I'm going to tell you up front that what I just typed is not going to work, but I'm going to go ahead and do it, and then we'll talk about why this particular one doesn't work. So when we do that, we're going to get an error that says distance from sun is not a valid order by expression. So normally in SQL, you can order by fields that are not a part of the query. However, whenever you have a group by, you can no longer do that. So in a group by, you can only order by scalar fields that are part of the query, part of the group by, or you can order by an aggregate. And again, you can order by aggregates that are not part of the query. So we can trick this a little bit, and we can get this to order the way we would like it to be, but instead of using distance by the sun, we have to either use min or max distance by the sun. And let me show you here. I'll just use min. Okay, so now instead of having a scalar value, I have an aggregate function. Okay, so we can see that that did return the planets in the order that they are from the sun. So what is this trickery that I was mentioning, and why did I do this? Well, the key is here that this distance from the sun field is in the table that only has one record per planet, right? And so that's the P table or the planet table. So whether I choose min or max, it's going to be the same. In fact, let's do that really quick. Let's add a max distance from the sun And let's add a min distance from the sun as well here. So when I run that, you can see that the min and the max is the same because again there's only one record for each one. So what we're getting is the value of the distance from the sun, and we can use that in our order by to get the planets returned in the way we wanted to see them. So that kind of closes the loop on everything. Let's just clean it up and let's remove this min and the max right here because they're not needed to get the results we wanted. And voila, there we go, a count that includes those records with, oh, you know what, let's get this one too. And then we'll also remove this one. And now we're ready to run it. And voila. So there you have it. The list of all the planets and a count of how many moons each one has, including counts of 0. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope the way I explained it made sense to you. If you found anything that I got wrong or that you see we could have done differently, I'd love to have an exchange with you in the comments because I'm always looking to improve the presentation and to find new stuff to share with people as well. If there's something that I didn't explain very well and you'd like me to go into in further detail, please talk about that as well. Also, if I could ask a favor, I'd love to have you subscribe to my channel. I create Snowflake content fairly regularly, both like this, just learning, and also I address questions from the Snowflake SQL forums. So I'd love to have you subscribe and perhaps even select the notify bell so you know whenever I have a new video coming out. But for now, that's it for SQL Dan. Thank you for watching.